My name's Stephen, USSR Robinson, and thank you for watching Sport Icons.
Right, on this video, while it's going to be a little bit complicated, is something that I don't usually do. I've done similar in that before. Of course, prospect is like one of my passions when it comes to boxing, most notably heavyweight prospects. Now, when it comes to the UK prospects, of course, I know who most of them are, but going around the world, of course, I'm going to be a little bit limited in certain corners of the world, such as, say, some Mexican heavyweights. I may not know who they are. A Argentinian or a Lithuanian in that, for example, I'm not going to know who they are. And of course, some Russians in that as well. Some of you will. Now, criteria to make into, say, my top 20, my criteria may be a little bit different to yours. Okay, again, this is not designed for you to agree with. It's just designed for, first and foremost, for me to just give you what I think as a top 20. And also it's designed for you to maybe see a couple of names and maybe you don't really know who they are. Maybe go check them out. And of course, for you to put into comment section some of the names that maybe I haven't featured on here for either A, I've forgotten about them, or B, I don't know who they are. Okay? So it's a bit of a backwards and forwards between me and you. Now, criteria, people have different criteria as to what should be a prospect. For example, some people say if you're 30 years old and above, it doesn't matter how many fights you've had, they'll base it purely on age. If you're 30 years old and above, you can't be a prospect. I disagree with that. For me, I try to factor in how many fights you've had and your age as well. For example, say Zhilei Zhang. He's had 22 fights. Now, 22 fights, it's a fair bit of fights. Now, had he have been, say, 25 years old or even up to 30 years old, I would maybe just about put him into prospect. But the fact that he's 37 years old, coupled with the fact that he's had 22 fights, you're not a prospect for me. So for me, the Chinese heavyweight Zhilei Zhang is not a prospect when I couple in both of them. If he's 37 years old and had, say, 10 fights, maybe I could just about squeeze him into the prospect, if that makes sense. Okay? Some people say if you've had a world title, you can't be a prospect. I agree with that. For those of you, for those who have maybe on the peak of fighting for a world title, shouldn't really be a prospect. Again, as an example, I haven't put Dillian Whyte on this list. In some ways, I kind of could, but I didn't, based on the fact that he is over 30 years old, is kind of one of them, and he does have quite a lot of fights, but he's been in a lot of big fights. He has been the number one in the WBC for a long time. He has been the interim world heavyweight champion. Yes, of course, he did lose his last fight, but when you couple in everything, for me, he's not a prospect anymore. But the fact that he has had only 7 amateur fights, that's one of the reasons why he could potentially be a prospect. But I've just given you the reasons why I didn't put him in there, because of the amount of big fights that he's had. Some people say if you even fought for a world title, you shouldn't be on the prospect list. I disagree with that, depending on how many fights you had at that point and how old you are. I'll explain a lot more as this video goes along. So anyway, for me, my top 5 are the top 5 prospects in the world. Then from number 6 down to number 20, I'll put in alphabetical order, just so I put in the remaining 15 that I believe should be in the top lot. Now, certain fighters I haven't put in here, for example, Fraser Clark and Yelanov and that, for example, because they're currently amateurs. Now, if Filip Hrgovic goes off and fights for Croatia at the 2021 Olympic Games, for me, Filip Hrgovic gets removed from my top 20 because he's gone back into the amateur system. This is for professional fighters only, and you must have had at least one fight as a professional. So, for example, say Johnny Fisher. He's had no fights as a professional so far. Mark Tibbs is training, so clearly he got something about him. He was a pretty good amateur, so I hear. And much like Declan Fusco. Declan Fusco, he's from my neck of the woods up here in Newcastle. I've spoke to him many, many times, and I will be catching up with him real soon for him to officially announce that he's turning professional. In fact, he's signed professional forms with Mark Clazel. He's trained under Nick Gitters. But as an amateur, of course, he's been around the amateur system, the GB setup with Joyce, Fraser Clark, Anthony Joshua and all that kind of thing. expect good things from him. But because he hasn't had a professional fight yet, I can't put him in this particular list. Nicolsi Solomon. Okay, Nicolsi Solomon, he's had 3 fights. American heavyweight. He did lose his professional debut, and he's only had 2 fights since. He does have another fight coming up at the end of this month on some small hall American show. But for me, he needs a little bit more to get into this one, okay? It's not always about the win-losses, but it's just about my own personal perspective of what it is I see. Evanji Romanov, is he a prospect? He's undefeated as a professional, had a very good amateur career, but he spent several years between amateur and pro. You're not a prospect anymore, in my opinion, much like Cash Ali and that as well. Cash Ali did take a fair bit of time off, we know why. He is trained under now Richard Towers. Again, Richard Towers is an unproven coach right now, so I'm not fully confident in their partnership, but hey, maybe time will tell. Anyway, the top 5 is what we're going to start off with. These are the top 5 prospects in the world, and I'll try and justify all these as we go along. So number 1, Hughie Fury. I think that he is the best prospect in the world, and I know it's going to go down like a lead balloon for a lot of people for various reasons. Some people don't believe in Hughie Fury because they just don't like his style. The style doesn't mean too much. Would you say that any prospect out there will definitely beat Hughie Fury? Would you put your house on it? Would you put your car on it? Of course you wouldn't. For me, I think that Hughie Fury would beat, say, Filip Hrgovic, Joyce, Michael Hunter, Martin Bakole. These are my top 5. In that order, by the way. Filip Hrgovic could legitimately be number 1. But I believe that Hrgovic could be toppled by a Joyce, Michael Hunter or Martin Bakole. He could be beaten by any one of those. In fact, hopefully we'll find out soon enough, because Filip Hrgovic should be taking on Michael Hunter next, I believe. So, again, Joyce. Okay, Joyce, he got an excellent win over Dubois. How good was Dubois? We don't know, is the truth of it. A lot of this is on opinion, okay? But he does have wins over former WBC World Heavyweight Champion Bermane Stiverne. I never rated that guy anyway, but still, he does have one. He's got a very good win over Bryant Jennings. Some people felt that Bryant Jennings won that fight. But, again, right now it's just an opinion. For me, he's the 3rd best prospect in the world right now. Number 4, Michael Hunter. We've seen him already. He's already beaten Martin Bakole, for example, and we'll soon find out when he fights Filip Hrgovic. He does have 1 loss on his resume, again, to Alexander Usyk. Should Alexander Usyk be a prospect? Okay, he's over 30 years old, hasn't had that many fights, but he has been undisputed cruiserweight world champion. That's why Alexander Usyk hasn't made it into my particular list. Anyway, that's the top 5 in order. Again, not designed for you to agree with me. It's just my opinion. Some people will say, what about Tony Yoka? Well, we'll get to that in a second. So here are the next 15 to finish off the top 20 in alphabetical order. David Adelaide, Efe Ajagba, Alan Babic, Naylor Bull, Dan Dubois, Junior Farr, George Fox, Nathan Gorman, Dorian Krasmaru, Dempsey McKean, Stephen Robinson, Frank Sanchez, Vladislav Sirenko, Fabio Wardley, and then Tony Yoka. See, in alphabetical order. Because it's far too complicated for me to go who's number 6, who's number 7, who's number 8. None of that's important. For me, the top 5 is what's going to go on very, very quickly. In the next year or 2, we'll see. For the remainder of these guys, I think we'll find out in the next 2 to 3 years how good they're really going to be. Okay? Now, we'll go through all of them. David Adelaide, he's only had 4 or 5 fights, looks pretty good. He's been a sparring partner for Tyson Fury. He's a Frank Warren fighter, and he does look pretty good. Still very, very early. Only 3 or 4 fights. Don't know. But of what I've seen, he could become a top 5 at some point in the next 2 or 3 years. Efe Ajagba again. Efe Ajagba, is he still managed by Shady Finkel? I don't know. I know he's moved over to the top rank side of things now with Bob Arum. So again, hopefully we'll find out in due course how good he's going to be. Excellent knockout power, Nigerian. He has been chin-checked before, knocked to the canvas before by Aego Kaladze, but it's heavyweight boxing. Anybody can be put out at any given time. Okay, but he got up and he won the fight. In fact, he was winning the fight up to that point, to be honest with you. But again, Efe Ajagba, we should find out probably within the next year or 2, rather than 2 to 3 years, how good he's going to be. Hopefully, Bob Arum has a bit more faith in him and gives him the opportunities, or if Efe Ajagba is willing to take the opportunities, let's see. Now, Alan Babic, I wasn't too sure whether or not to put him in the top 20 because I don't know if the heavyweight division is where his future lays. So far, he's looked pretty good, okay? But he has looked vulnerable at times. But again, not many fights. So he's going to have flaws. He's going to have certain things that he isn't sharp on yet. The size, the weight, that kind of thing. For me, he could well be a bridgerweight fighter. Okay, the new bridgerweight division between cruiserweight and heavyweight. But is he going to want to do that? Probably not, because obviously that's not really where the money is. The bridgerweight division is not filled with good names right yet, or right now even. So maybe that may tempt him down the line. But again, we'll have to wait and see, won't we? We really will. Naylor Bull, 7 wins, 1 defeat. Now, that 1 defeat did come against Kamil Sokolowski, sorry. Now, Sokolowski, yes, he's a journeyman and what have you, but sometimes he turns up to win. Journeymen are not usually to do that, but sometimes he does. Okay, we've seen him be quite a few fighters, to be honest with you. Nick Webb, for example, he knocked out Nick Webb. He's only ever been stopped by Dillian Whyte, and I think the other one was Nathan Gorman. I think it was. Maybe Cash Ali may have done as well. I think Cash Ali's fought him twice. But Naylor Bull, he's got the potential. He's been around the council, obviously with Nick Webb. He's very good friends with Nick Webb. He's been around in sparring with Dillian Whyte, with Tyson Fury, and quite a few other ones. So for me, I do hold a soft spot for Naylor Bull. Okay, and I think that Naylor Bull could do something if he really knuckles down and, of course, stays active and he's guided correctly. He's got the potential there. Because at one time, maybe 2 years ago, he was talked about in the same kind of breath as Nathan Gorman and Daniel Dubois by Frank Warren. Okay, but quite what happened with their relationship, I don't know. But either way, for me, he's still there or thereabouts. Daniel Dubois, okay, so he took a knee against Joe Joyce. And I maintain it was the right thing to do. He's young, 23 years old, huge career ahead of him. Again, people forget that a lot of people were picking Daniel Dubois to beat Joe Joyce. A lot of people were. And then after the fact, oh, well, he's too young. Oh, well, he's not enough experience. Oh, well, this, that, and the other. It's always after the fact. For me, Daniel Dubois, providing his eye heals up okay, he's still got a big, big future in the heavyweight division. He could still go on and be the chosen one, the Neo from the Matrix. He could go on to become world champion. Why not? Why not? Well, because he took a loss now. It's probably better to take a loss now than it is in 20 fights' time. Isn't it? It's probably better to take it now while you're still a sponge, because you're still young enough to soak everything up, learn from it, move forward. I think this loss could be one of the best things to have happened to him. Anyway, Junior Farr next. Junior Farr could move into the top 5 if he beats Joseph Parker. It's a tall order to beat Joseph Parker. We know that Parker and Farr, they have fought in the amateurs and that, but next month when these two get it on in the professional game, let's see how Junior Farr gets on. But right now, he's still somewhat of a prospect. Well, no, he is a prospect. So we'll have to wait and see how he gets on with Joseph Parker. George Fox as well. Good fighter so far. He's under the guidance of Dean White, I think it is now. Son of Don Charles. I think George Fox is the kind of guy that could do something, but do it under the radar. He's not really given... He's on the BT Sport platform. He's a Frank Warren fighter. But right now, he's kind of doing things under the radar. He's not a chief support or even close to chief support. He's kind of like first or second onto the card. He's doing it under the radar. Okay, so I think that George Fox could go on and do something really well of what I've seen of him so far. Again, very, very early. Was it 3, maybe 4 fights in? So again, very, very early, that's for sure. Nathan Gorman, again, I know people write him off because he lost to Daniel Dubois. Let's not forget, he didn't really train properly for that fight at all. He had a lot of problems in his personal life. Obviously, his kidney and that was in the hospital and lots of other things. I'm not saying the result would have been any different, not at all. But I'm saying, let's not just judge him on that one fight. He's still got a little bit of a road to come back. I know he's no longer with Ricky Hatton and that now, but he's still got a little bit more to do. But for me, he's still a top 20 prospect in the world. Honestly, I do. Dorian Krasmaru. Now, 3 fights in, was it 2 knockouts, 1 points win? The points win was over Phil Williams, if I remember rightly. He looks pretty good. He's Daniel Dubois' chief sparring partner. I know BT Sport hype him up a bit. I think they've hyped him up a little bit too much. but I think he just about edges into the top 20 because so far what he's been asked to do, he has done. I do think if you stick him in right now with some other prospects such as a Stephen Robinson or a Fabio Wardley in that, for example, I think they beat him up, knock him out. But hey, let's see the fights. Let's find out. Either way, Doran Krasmaru's in there. Dempsey McKean, 18-0 Australian. 18 fights. It's not a small amount of fights, but it kind of is. I know he hasn't beaten anybody of great standard right now, but he seems okay. Don't get me wrong, I don't know him that well. I've seen a couple of highlights, and I've only watched those highlights over the last couple of days. But he seems okay of what I've seen of him. And to go 18-0, listen, he's been 18 guys. We can, I mean, you know, I'll put down Wilder for his lack of resume, okay? But still, he has fought X amount of human beings and knocked them out. Same with Dempsey McKean. Now, out of those 18 wins, he has knocked out, was it 12 or 13 of them? Something like that. So clearly he's got something about him. But hopefully 2021, this year, we'll find out a bit more about him. Stephen Robinson, my very, very good friend, 3-0 heavyweight. Again, I've got the advantage where it comes to Stephen Robinson, where a lot of you guys obviously don't, because I see him a lot, a hell of a lot, in sparring, in training. We speak to each other on text message all the time, on the phone calls, this, that, and the other. Okay, he's a very, very good friend of mine. But I see things in him that makes me go, holy crap. Holy crap. And he's got the power to, we know that he looks like Ivan Drago from Rocky 4. Anything he hits, he destroys. He's a massive, massive puncher. He's got a very, very good trainer and manager with him as well. Mark Clazel, of course, Joe in that as well at the Vision Gym. Recently, he spent the camp with Hughie Fury to help Hughie Fury prepare for Marius Wack, and he's learned so much from that camp. He's 6'7", he's a huge powerhouse, and Peter was getting Stephen to use those attributes. Going forward, we'll see them. Of course, recently as well, he's been sparring Martin Bakole and quite a few others. He's been in there with Joyce and this, that, and the other, and always held his own every single time. But he's a lovely, lovely man. But as far as boxing ability goes, he's got the it factor. He's got it. And I'm not saying it just because he's my friend or anything. He's got the it factor. There's something about him that makes me go, don't be surprised if he's knocking on these big doors real soon. I know he wants that right now. He does have to be held back a bit by Mark and that, but he's got it. He really does have it. For me, a couple more 6-rounders, a couple of 8-rounders, then just cut the reins. Let's see what he's got. But I really, really, truly, honestly believe in Stephen USSR Robinson, Hightower. Frank Sanchez next. Cuban heavyweight, undefeated. He's either had or he's going to have a fight on DAZN. So I would presume he severed ties with the PBC now. He is trained under Eddie Reynoso, obviously trainer of Saul Canelo Alvarez, Andy Ruiz Jr. now, and of course Ryan Garcia. So again, he's got to have something. While of what I've seen of him, I haven't been that impressed with him. And I do think he's much older than what he's saying he is. But it's just a Cuban thing, right? But again, I don't buy into the hype just because he's Cuban that he's going to do something. Not at all. Cubans are in the amateur system way too long. And let's be honest, don't always achieve a great deal. But of course, when they turn over into pro, people talk about, oh, well, he's Cuban. He's got that Cuban background, that experience. I don't really see that with Frank Sanchez just yet. But to go the amount of fights that he has had and get the wins, he's done okay. So he has to get into the top 20. But again, this year, let's find out. Hopefully he fights one or two of this top 20 here. Hopefully. Vladislav Serenko, Ukrainian heavyweight. Again, I don't know a great deal about him. Again, just brief highlights again recently. Out of those, was it 15 wins? I think 12 or 13 of those he has knocked out. He hasn't beat anybody that I've heard of. So I don't know. But to just get to that point of 15-0, doesn't really matter who it is that you fought. At this stage, he's done pretty well. And I think he's, 27 years old? Something like that. I'm not exactly sure how old he is. But so far, he does look pretty good. Again, let's find out this year. Let's stick him in with, say, a Russian. Let's have that kind of area fight. Let's have Serenko take on Romanov. Let's see. Maybe a fellow Ukrainian in Krasmaru. Let's see. Fabio Wardley, Fabio Wardley, of course, from Ipswich. He's featured on this channel quite a few times. Spoke to him on the phone a lot of times. Text messages, even more times. Real nice guy, well-spoken. Very, very good. And I know people look at him sometimes and think, oh, he's got some vulnerabilities. Well, first and foremost, he's supposed to. Okay, he's still a prospect and didn't have, I don't really think he had any amateur experience, really. But what he does is constant pressure. And he's becoming smarter as well. You can see the improvements, fight after fight after fight. He hasn't had a great deal of fights. But what you see of him so far is you can see the levels going up, going up, going up. That win over Simon Vallily, he deserves a lot of credit for that fight. I know a lot of people don't really rate Simon Vallily. I do. Of course, I know him. But Fabio Wardley deserves a lot of credit. And I think Fabio Wardley, you put him in there with any of these other guys, don't be surprised if he gets the win. Do not be surprised at all. And yes, I do rate him above Alen Babic right now. I really do. I know we'll never see that fight because obviously they're not stablemates, but obviously they're both under the banner of Dillian Whyte. But for me, I think Fabio Wardley, if he was to fight, say, Alen Babic right now, he beats Alen Babic. Not comfortably, but he does beat him. Watch out for Fabio Wardley, honestly. And to finish it all off, Tony Yoka. Now, arguably, he could or maybe should be in the top 5. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people thought that when you saw my top 5. Tony Yoka, of course, we know about his Olympics, his amateur pedigree. We need to go into all that. But he has only had 9 professional fights. A couple of good wins. Decent win over his fellow French countryman in Johan Dubois. Of course, he got a win over Dave Allen. And I mean, for me, I think 9-0 of who he's been in there with already is pretty exceptional, to be honest with you. It's very, very good. But again, I want to see Tony Yoka. If he is going to be a top 5 currently, let's see him in there with Bakole, Michael Hunter, Joyce, Filip Hrgovic, Hughie Fury. Let's see if he deserves to be in the top 5. It wouldn't surprise me if he beat any of these guys. It wouldn't surprise me at all. But I think out of the remainder of the next 15 of the alphabetical ones that I've done, I think Tony Yoka is probably the one who would deserve a top 5 position. But again, only 9-0, a little bit more proving to do, I think. And of course, make sure that you keep on with your tests, Tony Yoka. Okay, anyway, that's my list of my top 20 prospects. Heavyweights, of course. I know it's quite a long video, so I do apologise. If any of you guys are still listening, blessings to you. I would have probably given up a while ago. Anyway, drop your thoughts below about it. Click thumbs up. Make sure you are subscribed. And I'll catch you all in the next video.